You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the Meta. The Meta controls everything. The Meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.
We're live!
And we're live! And it's not broken! Well, it was not broken, but now all of a sudden, like, you've, like, moved your camera just a slight bit to your left. I don't know how you did it.
Do you want me to lean over here?
No, it's not that. It's like your green screen is, like, shifted just a slight bit. But I can fix it. I got it.
It looks pretty good. It's alright. So yeah, hey, it's a Meta Show, and we got Tibrizzle here at the very last minute, which is fantastic. We have really a packed show today. This is going to be kind of an interesting one. So let's start off the right way. It has been an incredibly busy week in EVE as far as large amounts of spaceships dying, a couple of just massive fucking battles, trillions of hiss up and smoke, a little burp there. And at the center of all of it has been Villy, who is our guest today. Test Alliance has been involved in both fighting off a massive PL and NC dot dread bomb successfully, and God bless, and also in a huge combat against Fraternity, FRT, the Chinese organization, and NC dot just yesterday at
another big dread bomb.
At the downtime mark. So one of the reasons why we brought Tibrizzle on is that Tibrizzle is a super cap guy in the Imperium, and we kind of wanted to get into the nitty gritty of analyzing shield supers and what we can learn from these battles from kind of a vaguely autistic perspective. So I want to welcome everybody, and yeah.
We three here love our shield supers. I don't know about Mittens, but we all have Leviathans. It's great. It's the best.
I have a Wyvern as my super carrier, so I've got an Erebus as a Titan. But there you go. So yeah, let's see what we've got going on here before we get really stuck in.
Yeah. We need our guests to introduce themselves.
Yes,
we have a new guest that's never been on here before. Mr. Tibrizzle, may you speak?
I think he's been here before.
No, we've never had him on the Meta Show.
Oh wow.
Hi guys, I'm Tibrizzle.
And what do you do in EVE? What is your purpose?
I'm a member of the Goonswarm Sky Team. I oversee fleeter operations, typically when they involve our super capital fleet.
That is very serious and accurate. That's quite true. Also, we're getting some resubs here. We have Miza Evil hitting the 36 mark, so actually the 3-year mark. That is pretty fucking crazy.
It came and hit 37 months.
God damn, hookers and cupcakes for Thunder Wafa and Sally Salomon as well. Carfleet is recruiting. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Also, just Paper Apocalypse. So just a silly stream tricks. Last night, this has nothing to do with the Meta Show, but last night I saw Dirk McGurk nearly drank himself to death and was silenced on the Meta Show. They actually said that if somebody donated $250, they would mute Dirk.
Oh, they did.
And somebody did, and then somebody threw $250.01 to get him unmuted. And I was just like, what the hell is even happening?
They finished the show with $705 in an hour.
That is absolutely nuts. So we're not going to do that here on the Meta Show.
No, we're not going to get that drunk.
Though it would be interesting if we could, you know, I didn't know that you could monetize mic muting, but we're not going to do that here. We are going
to. Don't do that here, because I'll be muted pretty much 24/7. we can't have that.
That would be the you know, if muting boat cost. You know, if I could basically go up to people and be like, I'll stop talking to you for $250, that would be amazing.
That would be amazing. But then we also have our second guest, Mr. Villy. It's been a bit. I haven't been here in a long time, so Villy's back with us. Villy, go ahead and introduce yourself one more time for us.
Hello, I am Villy, Warden of the South, Master of Dinosaurs, one of the military, or the military kind of leader of Test Alliance, please ignore, and by default, kind of a pretty big part of the Legacy Coalition, I guess you could say. That's me.
Yay!
I didn't need, we do typically forget that the Legacy Coalition is a thing. It's Test and Brave and Crew. I just linked a new a survey form that Jay Amazingness, who has been the producer for the show, created. We pinged it out to the Imperium earlier, and I wanted to drop it here in chat. This is different from the normal INN streaming survey, but that is a meta show specific. So we want your feedback on how things are going. We are going to be going into, as usual, at the last 15 minutes of the show, we're going to be in sub-only mode, so look forward to that. And I think that's it for the introduction. I think that one of the things about feedback that I have been seeing in the survey is that people want us to kind of go around the galaxy and provide news in the Nullsec Power Hour, before we get stuck in with this or that, but just sort of almost like a weather map and be like, well, in the northeastern quadrant of the galaxy, things are very quiet.
Yeah, I can add that for next week easily.
We don't have that ready this week, but that's the kind of good feedback that we've been... well, that's because it's not ready yet. That's the kind of good feedback that we've been getting from people responding to the meta show specific survey. So if you have more cool ideas, please fill out the forum so we know. So yeah, let's do it. Let's aim for top story.
Yay! Our top story today comes in two parts, and the only reason it's in two parts is because they both took place in the same place, involving pretty much the same people, and especially our special guest. So, yeah, before we jump into it, though, just a few seconds. Sirhan Blix, thank you for 33 months, and CS Shuffle, 30 months. Yay! That's a lot of months.
It is.
All right, so the first top story involves our dearest of friends, NC Dot and PL. Who attempted to do what goons did to their allies, but to Test, and it went about as well as you would expect a PL thing to go nowadays. The first of these dread bombs happened on Sunday, involving PL and NC Dot dropping 250 dreads, which was more than we had, by the way.
No, 296.
Oh, 296! Okay, but they lost 244. So they had over 100
they lost
more dreads.
290 boats.
Oh,
they lost 290.
My numbers are off. God damn it, producer. No, anyways, 290 dreads. That's
We're not sure
90...
if the 6 that are not showing, they actually got away, or if the kill medals have never shown.
So. Jesus Christ. Well, they dropped 90 more dreads than we did, and managed to lose all of them for a Ragnarok. That's it.
I'm gonna go ahead and drop the BR link that we have here in chat so you guys can follow along.
We also have an INN report for you.
So, really, we weren't. I watched it live when it happened because there was a hostile agent that was streaming it, and it was fascinating. I got to hear Villy give a morale speech right in the middle of it when the tide turned, and the hostile broadcaster was all butt blasted. It was like, oh, it was so cringy. But I thought it was actually a fantastic one. So I wanted to just sort of hand this over to Villy, and why don't you just start from the beginning and tell us the story? What happened?
So PL Legion has been using an Athanor, of all things, Citadel like any other, to do Titan bridges onto the Ocean Gate in UQ. So, it's kind of a highly traveled gate, as it's like a 12 light year jump gate. So they've been doing little drops on it. So Valxoria, one of our FCs, reinforced the Athanor because it pissed him off. So he's like, oh, fuck that, I'll go reinforce it. So he went and reinforced it. So then, day of, this thing's coming out first reinforced. And, every Alliance in EVE has, a few people that like to tell them things. So a little birdie chirped in my ear. It's like, hey, Villy, Gil and NC Dot are preparing long-range dreads. Are you interested? And I'm like, oh, thank you, little birdie. I appreciate this. And it was good intel. So, all of a sudden, PL and NC are preparing long-range dreads is like, that's interesting. Because generally when someone prepares something special for you, they think they've got kind of that extra edge, which makes them, more comfortable going in kind of thing. And certainly long-range dreads are an interesting dynamic, but PL and NC Dot have never shown any actual ability to use them before, so sure. So, myself and ProGod and the team, we just started pinging out that we're going to do the op for that, and we hustled over. We had a full rock fleet. Because we were kind of not really prepared to take a big fight on this initially. We only had the main full fleet of rocks with some Jackdaw complement or something. We were trying to get Legacy spun up late. So that Maelstrom fleet and additional caps weren't there with us till near the end of the fight. We got in system with 250 rocks. PL and NC both had their own rock fleets formed, so we were outnumbered by 150 rock fleet. Not rocks per se, but it was 400 to 250 roughly in terms of subs. They sat on their Athanor tethered. We went in at range with subs at about 200 off and just started sniping Athanor while they sat tethered. So we knew we were going to need to escalate a little to win the subcap fight, obviously. So we brought in about 50 to 70 carriers behind our rocks, 200 kilometers behind, kind of in a straight line. And then deployed carriers, fighters. And so at this point, we have carrier fighters and rock fleet shooting the Athanor. Then PL and NC tether, and it's basically rock fleet versus rock fleet and fighters. And anybody with a brain can generally figure out how that's going to go overall, because 70 carriers are equivalent basically to an entire rock fleet plus in many cases. So the fights happens for a couple minutes, and we see PL moving these giant piles of dreads from their staging systems, and we're like, oh shit, this might happen. We formed full Titan supers, dreads, whatever. Very low notice, but it's still good numbers. And anyways, they decide to drop a pack of about 50 sniper dreads 200 kilometers behind our carriers, kind of in a straight line. So you've got a 600 kilometer line where you've got PL's new sniper dreads, test carriers 200 kilometers from them, 200 kilometers from them, our rock fleet, and 200 kilometers from them, PL and NC rock fleet with the Athanor. At which point, I immediately put in our first squad of Bosun Titans, which is 5 of them and myself. We jump in right away, Bosun into the PL and NC sniper dreads. I think we Bosun out 19 dreads. Nothing incredible. They get a pretty good bump off. We chunk a bunch of them, I'm sure, obviously. At which point, I bring in one of our 4 fax squads, super carriers, and then a little bit after, half of our dreadnoughts, because just clearing the dreadnoughts that were chunked wasn't going as quick as I would like. So after about 2-3 minutes of this, PLNC, which is 30 seconds of die time, I guess. PL and NC bring in, the whole thing, all their dreads, which is 240 short range dreads, I guess, at this point. Directly on 0 on the Sino on our Titans. At this point, everything goes in, all our fax squads, all our dreads, all our carriers, all our Titans, everything. And it's just kind of a, here we go, let's brawl. So they immediately start primarying faxes. They chew through 40 minnows, and then they start switching to Titans. They do manage to kill the first Titan with 30 of our minnows still on field at this point, and we're reshipping minnows. We've got a pretty clean cache, and we have we've had some practice in terms of reshipping minnows in a fight like this. But they go after the first Titan who they've been neuting, but he's desynced and lagged out a bit, and he dies. We're not sure if he would have survived if he wasn't desynced. He died at 100% capacitor, but he still couldn't turn on his hardeners from the whatever. So we were seeing him at 40% shield when he was going into structure. He kind of lagged, desynced out or whatever. So, and the whole time we're of course just clearing dreads. In the time they cleared the 40 faxes, we cleared 110 dreads. And then they, at 20:05 in the battle report, whatever, they go after the Titan. And as I say, so the one Titan dies, and then they switch on the second, and he has no problem surviving. And then they try a hell, and then another hell, and then another hell, and something else, and then they're like, okay, we're not going to break any Titans. So, or supers. So they basically just give up on that, and then they try to kill dreads. After wasting 10 to 30 minutes, in tie-dye, real time, not tie-dye time, like trying to shoot supers all the while, you know, we're killing another 100 dreads or whatever. And at that point, they're like, okay, let's kill dreads. And they killed like 9 dreads with their last 70 to 100 dreads because, you know, all our doomsdays are cycling back up again. And, you know, we have 50 supers and another 40 titans, 100 some dreads, you know, just everything basically laying into those dreads. So they kill 9 dreads, I think. And at that point, you know, the fight's over. Their subs bail. Pro-God and Iron Wolf and all the subs have just been wailing on them the whole time. So they've got no real chance to win the fight, and they bail, and that's pretty much it. They're pretty disappointed with themselves, I guess. And, you know, it was a pretty rousing moment for Test, because at that point, you know, we had been threatened by, you know, that dread bomb for near on 2 months or more. And we knew it was coming at some point, but we had wanted to take it in range of UQ just because if you're unable to reship the faxes at proper speed, it becomes very difficult. And certainly, you know, eventually they got tired of waiting and they took the fight in range of us, and you know, they paid the price for it.
That's fantastic. I want to bring Timurizel in here because one of the things that happened on the Imperium side of the aisle the previous week, of course, was us whacking 5 Darkness Titans up north, where we, in a somewhat similar scenario, were on the aggressive dread bombing side, and we churned through 5 Titans and did just fine with it. Timurizel, can you maybe give us... I'd kind of like to get into...
It's especially interesting to know that when you guys did it, you managed to save, what... more over half of your dreads.
Yeah, 100 dreads. Yeah.
Instead of dying to the man, and there was no NC Dot, you know, Superfleet coming to save me like there was GOTG, right? It's
That's true. Yeah. So basically, what I want to bring Timurizel in here to answer is, what was the difference? Why did it work for us, and why did it fail for NC and PL? And what can you tell us about that from an analytical perspective?
Okay, so I think there are 2 key differences between those engagements. And our engagement against Darkness inserted the majority of their fax fleet to support a single avatar that had bumped off, but that avatar had only been engaged lightly by Ishtars at that point, so the majority of their Titans were completely unsupported by fax. And it was on their main ball, unsupported by fax, that we dropped our dreads. So we had very little reps resisting the damage we were doing. The other key difference is what little fax they were able to get into range that didn't die, versus the fax Test had on field. Test fax were shield fax, and in small number scenarios where you're not actually managing to nuke the primary out, as long as the shield super primary has its hardeners on and they're heated, and it's taking heated reps from the fax, that's like twice the rep you'll get from the equivalent scenario with an armor fleet.
Wow, so I didn't realize it was so extreme.
Yeah, because armor fleets are full passive fit, so they have no active hardeners, so they can't be neutered out, but a passive fit doesn't have as much effective hit points. So
it should be noted, though, I mean, if you look at the Mulio's Rag that we lost, we actually run as a standard with 2 passive hardeners. We run a passive EM and a passive thermal, so it kind of buys us that... it removes the possibility of a shield super with no hardeners basically just getting volleyed by dreadnoughts to a degree, especially when, you know, what we're looking at primarily as a threat is EM and thermal doomsdays, and revelations are, you know, even in this fight, as, you know, kind of predicted, revelations were, you know, the dread of high, well, it was well over 100 revelations. If they're shooting into a 0% EM hole, it's pretty bad, right? So we run passive EM and thermals just to kind of mitigate the ability to instant kill a super in that way. You know, obviously, you know, if you start overheating, you know, Pith A type invones, you know, that's like 60% on all resists times 2. It's very hard to break it.
Well, this is one of those things that this is a extremely hot issue. PL and NC Dot have been vehemently in favor of armor only in all things. we have in Goonswarm have been criticized over the years by having a mixed fleet, because we do have a mixed fleet. We've got a lot of people, so we have both armor and shield supers. And so this is an interesting situation where shield supers have been criticized and ignored repeatedly, or sent on suicide doomsday runs by NC Dot. And here you're seeing a scenario where it's a bunch of armored dreads versus, well, actually they might have had some Naglfar. I have no idea how they take their dreads. But I sort of wonder, is there something that we can extrapolate? Timbersel, what do you think? Is there a lesson, or you and Villy, I'm kind of curious to see your perspectives. Are there lessons that we can draw from comparing these engagements about the utility of shield supers in the modern environment?
When I look at the fight, it basically confirmed a lot of the things we knew before the fight, which is that if you have enough facts, most of the other stuff doesn't matter. Your tank is in your facts. If you are prepared on your facts, you will do just fine. And that was very much proven in the fight. The only time we lost that Titan being they chewed through a significant amount of our faxes. There may have been other issues we still don't know. As long as you have those facts, you're going to be pretty okay. On the other hand, if it's an armored Titan Super Brawl versus a Shield Super Brawl at 0, I would still consider the armor Super Brawl stronger if they're sitting on each other at 0. But once you start sitting at each other in 50 to 100 kilometer range, I give a personal advantage to the Shield group, because at that range, you have a stronger tank, and you generally do a little more damage, but you're still cap reliant. So it's a very tricky situation. Both sides have advantages, but it's tricky to find what works in every situation.
Is it a general guideline, would you say, that shield supers with proper fact support outperform armor when it comes to defending against a dread bomb specifically?
I think so. If you look at the numbers, like a Minakawa puts out 40,000 DPS and reps. That's 4 dreads that aren't overheating.
It's a lot more than that. If you look at
way more than that.
Well,
a Leviathan
Tib?
with heated hardeners taking heated reps, it's almost 300,000 DPS. So you can negate 30 dreads with 1 fax in that scenario if you're talking about the shield fleet, and you meet the basic capacitor transfer requirements to sustain the hardeners.
Yeah, I was more
how
like...
difficult is it to sustain the, how hard is it to organize? Like, if you go for a shield super kind of scenario, how hard is it to make sure that your faxes are running the appropriate cap chains, or I guess they can't run
There is no cap chains
because they're in siege mode, triage mode, I should say, but they are just injecting, I suppose. Is it really all that difficult, or is it pretty much fire and forget? 1 minnow means 30 dreads. Ha ha ha.
No, it's much more like 1 minnow is like 10 dreads in a more realistic world, I would say. Maybe less than that even. But, you're going to, our minnows, we run 2 shield transfers and 1 cap transfer on every minnow. And every minnow is obviously the same. The thing is, most of the time, the minnows don't need to even utilize their cap, because nobody's shooting at supers under cap reps. Nobody's really that dumb. Teal only went for it because they thought, it could work, and then it did for that first guy. But obviously, it started failing pretty quickly, and they're like, "Oh shit!" And they're like, "Oh shit!" And then it was too late, right? Because as you're shooting into heated super cap and minnow reps, you're just dying.
Good way to look at it is look what happened to JMA's in this giant poop mobile when it got neuted out. When you have focused newts and a very small number of facts, the facts become unreliable. But as you build on facts, when you have 40, 50, 60 facts on grid, shield ones versus armor, they just do so much better, because you're not going to newt out all those facts, and those facts are able to provide just enough cap to keep the shield supers with tank, and shield supers that have active tank are far superior than the armor in every way. They just, raw numbers is higher. And the thing about another people forget too is shield reps come at the beginning of a cycle, not at the end. Whereas armor comes at the end. So you're getting that instant hit of shield as new ones come in. It doesn't take that little bit of time. There might have been a situation where maybe reps, like if NC Dot jumped right next to GOTG and started throwing reps with shield instantly, the shields might have went right back up. Where's the Dread Bomb? Whereas armor, it might not have made it in time.
How did you, and this is a question for Villy, I mean, I see that you guys have a good mix of dreads here. You've got some revs, you got a few Moroses. How did you go about, have you shifted to an entirely shield super force? Like, have you just told everybody who happens to have an armor super or titan to trade it away? Or, like, are you guys 100% committed to that?
Yeah, the only armor titans and supers we have left are Rattings, supers, and the only armor titans we have left are basically bridge mobiles.
How did you
something
go
we've been
about
working on
implementing
for 2
that?
years.
Okay, is that something that you're just like, hey guys, just trade away the armors, or?
Yep, it was a rough. Actually, funny enough, that was a really hard pill for some of the CO2 guys to accept when they joined us, because CO2 had been all armor, and actually two of the one main corp that had resisted that switch is now back enjoying life in CO2 after losing 8 supers trying to move up north.
Do you do another question too? I guess is. Did you do like a buyback program when you did a full switch? You like, hey, you Erebuses, we're gonna help you out. We'll get you into another ship. Nope, they just like, hey, make it happen.
We traditionally haven't had that kind of money to just be like, here's extra money. If you want to buy Shield Super, there's like 15 hells or something on the DP market right now. The supers aren't hard to get right now. They haven't been for a long time.
What is I mean, would you say that there are any other entities in EVE that have a
The only other entity in EVE that was committed to Shield Supers was Tri, and unfortunately they have had seen better days. So literally at the moment it's PanFam, who is full armor, Imperium, who is mixed, Legacy, who is shield, and DRF, who's kind of armor. They don't really have a ton of supers. And
yeah, does DRF have a super fleet to speak of?
I've seen armor.
They have like an armor super fleet, but like it's still smaller than
Nix's count.
Like Veil.
Ratting Hells. I mean, but does it really matter if they have a super fleet when they usually just buy off anyone that would be an offense to them at Behemoth? I mean,
well, it would absolutely matter if they were trying to win some fights against like Skill Yourself and this crew up in the drone regions right now, right?
Yeah, so,
yeah. Super forces are pretty important to project your force, and if you look up in the drone regions right now, it's Hard Knocks and Skill Yourself and their super fleet that's dominant.
Yeah,
drone regions is...
Another thing I'd like to add too, I think that makes a big difference in the way our fight went versus the way the NC Dot one. Before we jump to our next story, which is the second fight, is we had somewhat of a control of subcaps in our fight. It was a very small number of subcaps, so holding tackle was a lot harder for NC Dot and GOTG. Obviously, NC Dot was late, which gave time for people to do one siege cycle and get the fuck out. Like, I almost got out myself if I hadn't crashed a whole bunch. Whereas in the test fight, there's so many subcaps, so many tacklers, so many numbers, that every dread was just bubbled like crazy and tackled like crazy. They just weren't going anywhere.
One of the questions that I think that's a really good point, Bode, is the sheer amount of slaughter that Test and friends pulled off here is just breathtaking. Like the fact that 300, almost a full 300 dreadnoughts just got vaporized in return for basically nothing is just is fantastic. I want to throw roll the golden apple of chaos through the middle of the show here and open up sort of a question here. And this is aimed primarily at both Villy and Tibrizel, because you guys are turning into the experts on this. Okay, so Test has proved the viability of a all-shield force, which is something that a lot of people in EVE who considered themselves to be the elite, who were better than everybody else in theory in CNPL, look down their nose at the idea of an all-shield force. Why would you do that? Everybody knows that armor is the way to go. From an Imperium perspective, we have a mixed fleet. We have lots of arguments about this one way or the other. Is there a... Tibrizel, do you think that having a mixed fleet is more viable than having all armor, all shield? Do you think that we should consider what Test has been doing and look into emphasizing shields more in the future? What do you think?
I don't think the mixed fleet would be viable for anyone else in the game. It's only really viable for us because of our numbers, because we have the players to actually field back support for both the armor and the shield lane.
So is the ratio? I mean, Billy, what would you say?
I would agree. Like in reality, at your guys' size, there's only one other capital force in EVE that's comparable, right? So the game is very different, and for a force of your size, even just trying to convert, like obviously, if you guys are all armor or are all shield, I think you're like slightly stronger, but on the other hand, you lose, some of that numerical advantage. So, you basically trade some numbers for some efficiency, I guess you could say. I don't think either way you guys are particularly stronger. But first, like smaller alliances, you basically have to, or small coalitions, I guess. So have to be one or the other, because I can't afford to run 40 apostles and 40 minnows. I need 80 minnows, right? It's very one way or the other kind of thing.
Yeah, one way to look at it too, with our sheer numbers, it's actually a benefit to have all of them, because you can't damage tank. Like in the case of PLNC,
somebody's at the door, boat.
Yeah, I don't know who the fuck's doing that. Sorry. I'm gonna murder somebody in a minute. But anyway, you have a situation where you can't damage tank Erebuses and Avatars like we could against PLNC, or you can't damage tank Leviathans and Ragnaroks. Fucking hell, this is driving me nuts! I'm gonna murder somebody. Yeah, someone's about to get murdered. Okay, but you see a situation
Hopefully
where we
it's not the SWAT team.
We have all the damage types. Now, they would have kicked in my back door. We have all the damage
true.
types, right? So it makes it really hard to tank just Avatars, just EM Thermal. You have to tank all of them. And with the sheer numbers, that's a boon. But then if you look at a situation, I think it was Snuffbox Haiwanto. You know who that is? We all know who that is. He's a Snuffbox leader. He points out that in very small numbers, armor works, right? When you have small numbers in small situations, like in low-sec fights, armor works really well. But in big situations, where it's just sheer numbers, like giant numbers, Test's this situation works. So that's an interesting little note there.
Here's a sort of mechanical question. In the middle of the fight, being able to resupply faxes, obviously, like the faster you're able to get faxes of any kind, but in the test case, minnows are particularly effective. So getting as many minnows on the field as you can is critical to sustaining the initial damage. That's one of the things that we find in Delve, of course, with our standing fleets, is we just try to get as many faxes into the breach to protect any Rorqual or super that's caught as quickly as possible. How did you mechanically go about distributing faxes? Did you have people on deck to handle like a central cache? How did you get them into the hands of the pilots that needed them and on the field fast enough?
We just I just put in the MOTD. If you die, trade remote worker, who is the alt of our logistics director, Skyver, and put a 1 ISK for a minnow, 2 ISK for a nag, 3 ISK for whatever.
Oh wow!
And so when they died, they reloaded the MOD, saw what they needed to do. With 2 ISK, got a minnow, jumped back in.
Oh, that's interesting. So they don't actually even need to. I think I've seen this done on some of Karma Fleet's Saturday Night Swarm Ops. By using the certain set amount of ISK, they don't have to say, "Hey, I need this." The person who's doing the distribution always automatically knows what the person is asking for.
Yeah, we do that in Bomberwolf. If you need bombs, or a ship, you put 1 for Purifier, 2 for Hound, stuff like that. It makes it really easy to distribute things on a rapid scale.
Yeah. So I mean, most of the guys who died. Like, the problem was that they couldn't self-destruct their pods quick enough. And usually they were back in UQ. They had their new fax usually within 10 to 15 seconds, and then they were back in.
How I don't know whether this is OPSEC or not, but out of curiosity, during the course of that fight, how many ships of each sort did you end up distributing from your cache?
I think we handed out 40 minnows, roughly. I think we got 5 back. Sounds right, maybe. I think 40. Like only 40 minnows and a dozen dreads. Like we have a lot ready to go, so it was not too worrying.
Another benefit, Mittens, about that is it creates a log. So you can see if guys are taking multiple that they otherwise wouldn't do, or you can see if you need to reimburse someone. It makes a nice copy-pastable log that you could put into an app that would say, okay, this person got a replacement, he didn't die, he doesn't have a Z-kill, okay, he doesn't need ISK. You know, it makes it very streamlinable.
That makes sense.
Another thing, too, I want to go into here is I've been asking this question of some friends that I trust in the EVE community. I know a lot of higher-end FCs like K-Color and others. What would happen in a situation like this? Because it just seems like this might inevitably happen with PL and NC that grow, if they grow a pair, is if they snuck their supers down. Like, if you guys were balls deep in that Dread Brawl right there and their supers just drop, what happens then? Like, is that a situation you're concerned with or no?
Not really. It's pretty hard to hide moving supers. Like, really hard. I mean, they've moved like 20 Titans and like 30 supers into their new staging in T-Dakar and Providence. And like, we literally have every pilot name like recorded and stuff because, you know, the guys that are scouting there are like, oh my god, PL supers, I must record this all. And I'm like, cool. All right, so we have like a, you know, so if they're going to try and sneak their super fleet from, you know, the north, there's no way you're going to manage to do that without getting noticed like 5 times over.
No, that's what I was told, is you would see it coming.
And also presumably Villy would hit us up and we would come and gangbang the fuck out of
right.
him.
And that's another question, too, is that you look at a situation that happened to PL where in a 3-4 hour fight, PL saw them coming from Black Legion when Black Legion went that 4-hour trip south and dropped in with Brave. They kept PL tackled for that long. Is that a thing you guys have to worry about? You know, if you get held down with 40 Titans in a situation, someone big enough could show up.
No.
Nice. That's what I want to hear.
Like, the mechanics just don't allow people to move across the map that easily, and you have to move with a force that's big enough to fight our force. Like,
right, yeah, the fatigue changes, though. I'm just wondering if that's a thing, because, I mean, I know.
Well, it's still 30-minute jumps, like, after the first 3 jumps. So, you know, from the north to the south is, like, 12 mids?
Yeah.
Like, 10 mids?
Yeah.
So you're looking at 4 hours, 5 hours. And on top of that, as soon as they made, like, the second jump into the low sec, everybody in EVE would know, right? Like,
right, yeah, you would know. That's just something.
On top of the fact that all those Dread pilots would have to log in their supers, and they'd have to be multi-boxing even more, which makes it harder for, you know, them to actually operate in the fight. You know, which is something even Killaby noted. You know, when they were trying to like fly their rocks and their caps at the same time. You know, it's hard to multi-box effectively.
It just feels like that's the point it'll get to. It's like, you guys are at a point now. There's really nothing that can contest that little pocket of space you have, unless PLNC dot swing their dick, because it just doesn't seem like there's numbers there. Like, even if they even had overwhelming subcaps, and this is a good segue to our next story. FRT in this fight, if you want to go through this one, here's the battle report to that and what went down with that. FRT were defending on their own Fortizar, had subcaps. Obviously, they got obliterated pretty quick, but they still dropped dreads. Like, even after they lost all their subcaps, they still dropped their dreads. What went on here?
So Fraternity has been kind of spurred on by, who knows, you know, perhaps some northern friends or someone else to invade Immensea, which is their choice. But so they dropped a Fortizar in Quebec Echo TAC, which is like literally one jump into Immensea space. It's the border of our space, I guess you could say, with them. And we're like, no. And, you know, their mistake, obviously, and they've acknowledged this mistake to us, is they had it so it comes out on Good Friday, which is, you know, holiday, which means everyone can show up. Yeah. So, you know, on the, you know, heels of, you know, one Super Cap massacre, who doesn't want a second? So, we broadcasted and pinged, and Fraternity broadcasted and pinged, and, everybody's hyping up for both sides. And, I log in the morning, and I think one of the videos already has, it's like, I had nightmares. It's like, there'll be fucking 1,400 Chinese waiting for me in the morning. And I log in, and there's
yeah, I saw that, yeah.
And there's like 600, and I'm like, oh, this is fucking nothing. I'm like, I'm not worried at all anymore. And it's like, oh God, so it's a much more interesting little fight because there was actually some dynamics to it. Fraternity tried a bunch of weird things. We brought in all our subs on our Fortizar that was right across from theirs because we had like a 1-day anchor and they had a 6-day anchor, so we had the option of just dropping a fort to prep for the fight. And we went on their fort as the timer hit 0. They bridged in all their Tempests at 0 on the other side of the fort. And being the Olympic athletes they are, when Siku went for a bombing run on them, rather than dock, they just anchored up and all died. So their first Tempest fleet evaporated in a pretty short order, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And then NC Doc came with Macarials, and Ranger came with Gilas, and Fraternity came with more Tempests, and then more Tempests, and everybody showed up, and it was a brawl. And so then they dropped a carrier drop group on one side and a carrier group on the other side of the Fortizar, and we put a dread packet of 50 on each of those. They escalated with all of their dreads on one of our dread packets. So we bosuned, took 5 Titans, a bosun team for us, and bosuned that dread drop for like 60 dread kills, and then just dropped a hammer on that. And they put everything else they had in, and it was still a slaughter. There's not much you can do in that case. They just shot dreads and they killed like 30. We killed 200 dreads and 30 carriers and some other stuff. So,
how have you been organizing your bosun teams? I mean, NC tried to do that against us during one of the 9-Tech-4 things, and they only used 3 Titans. That didn't work very well. You've been clearly using a team of 5 Titans for bosuning in 2 engagements in the same week now.
Yeah, so my general theory with bosun teams is I go packets of 5, so I usually prep 2. So 2 packets of 5 Titans with bosuns, bosun team 1, bosun team 2. And my general assumption is when you pop a Sino, the way the Titans spawn around that Sino is kind of randomized, right? So if you don't have 5, there's no guarantee that they're going to spawn on the right side of the Sino, right? And the left side of the Sino to the right side of the Sino for a Titan can be like 30 kilometers, or effectively the range of a bosun. So unless you have 5, there's kind of no guarantee that you're even going to get 2 good bosuns. So,
because the aiming is hard, right?
Right, yeah.
Well, not only the
The
aiming,
range
but
is
if you
short.
the range is short, and if you end up on the wrong side of the Sino, you're very likely not to be in range of any of the enemy dreadnoughts.
Have you
Makes
thought
sense.
about Lancing, by the way? The big, like, targeted...
Yeah,
during the
well, I mean, obviously everybody knows the meme Reaper from our Super Cap fight with...
Yeah.
Who was that? Oh, with CO2. But Lances are just not effective enough. They don't do enough damage in a big enough area. They're significantly harder to aim. Like, Lances are only really good against, like, subcaps at range or, like, super balled up captains at range. And the fact that they newt everybody out around them isn't super great for shield caps. Like, I don't need that much capacity to work with, but it just causes, problems and doesn't help anything, and they just don't do much damage, realistically.
Yeah. So here's a question. This got linked to me a minute ago, and I completely forgot about this going on. Kotaku did a good article about this. Is that EVE Online found a exploit in their client that allowed Chinese players to play the standard EVE client in Chinese, which makes a big deal. And I heard that hurt FRT quite a bit. It made it so a lot of native Chinese speakers just can't play EVE now. How does that, you think, affect the invasion they have planned? I mean, this big invasion.
If they lose numbers, like, that's the only thing they got going for them.
Right.
Their FCs are definitely not the Olympic athletes as claimed. They have proven to be quite lacking in terms of their skill level. So if they don't have that numerical advantage with the time zone advantage, they're in trouble. So it definitely is not a good sign for them.
That is interesting. Yeah, this Kotaku article. I hadn't seen that before. Thanks for the link.
Yeah, I saw
this
it
is
during the
something
week,
that,
and then someone just reminded me just a minute ago. So
yeah.
That's it's a big deal because and it actually blew up on Reddit because the guy that discovered it was one of the Chinese players, and he reported it to CCP, and he got a lot of hate for it because it really neutered a lot of people's ability to play. because, as we all know, there is no Chinese support for the client because China has its own server, which is done in Chinese. It's part of the way that China operates when it comes to video games. You have to have 2 separate servers if you're going to have a game in China, and China can bring in a lot of money, so they have 2 separate servers. And what people were doing is they were using this exploit to be able to play on the U.S. server, so they could play on both. And that our guest from FRT, from Fraternity, that came on one time, said that was a thing, that people would play on both, and you would end up in situations where people would set timers on both to come out at the same time, so their players would have to choose. Well, with this gone, that's a big deal. It's a big deal.
One of the things I want to throw in here, as we discuss this, that we are at the 45-minute mark, so we've turned the channel to subscribers-only mode. If you guys have any particular questions for us or for the guests, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will do our best to address them. Tibbers, do you have any commentary on the FRT engagement, and is there something that we can learn from that?
I'm not really familiar with that engagement, to be honest.
Okay, well then, on second thought, is there something that we didn't really cover about the test versus PL and NC engagement? And what do you think that this means for PL and NC, just as a broader point? If they're unwilling to commit their super capital fleet, what does it say about their ability to project power if people are seeing the use of fax caches increase across the game?
It's an interesting question.
Would you like a moment to think about it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do that. And real quick, I want to bring up a nice little pivot here. You talked about the streamer, the hostile spy streamer that streamed the fight that went down with NCPL. He streamed Test Comms. That guy is actually kind of famous. Billy might know who he is. Obviously.
Mayo.
Yeah, just a little bit. He used to be a goon, and he was a spy guy for goons. Worked for Backcountry. Was in Backcountry. Used to give me a lot of intel. He helped me kill 2 Titans once with some spy work. He became obsessed with it for years and years. And Backcountry did not like him personally. They hated him, and because of that, he switched sides. He got with Lady Scarlet and flipped. He is the architect of a Discord that catches all pings from all of EVE and coordinates them by alliance. So you can just go into a Discord channel and see the ping that you see, and he's the architect behind that. And he's also NC.'s current spy master and handles all the spy work for NC. And their coalition.
Wait, so there's a channel where you can see everybody else's pings, Boat?
Yeah, you're in there. I've seen it. It's a Discord. That's how you knew that we broadcasted for the Meta Show. How else do you think you saw that? But it's an interesting Discord. Lumpy told me about it one time. This was a year back or so, back when we lived in the North. But yeah, that's what that guy is known for. But he's just a weird guy. He's kind of like what Minton said a minute ago about autistic people. He gets that way about spying. So he does not like goons at all. He used to a long time ago. But yeah, so you have that spy guy, and then you have spies that work. It's almost like you can't sneak around in this game anymore. It's very, very hard to sneak around. And PL keeps saying over and over again, over and over and over again, that they don't want to use their Titans and Supers because it ruins fights. But I just don't see them getting any good fights. I mean, outside of killing Providence like they are now, going forward without them. Like, there's just too many big groups.
That's a good point. We got a question here from Darth Kill for Villy, which is, how did you find that the capital missiles fared for your super fleet in this engagement?
For the most part, they did fine. Torpedoes obviously have significant range issues, but both of the brawls, we had the fights going on basically at 0. So it wasn't a giant issue. Obviously, missiles have delayed DPS, so Phoenixes have issues, with damage time to target. So they often end up losing their volleys. It's just part of the life, I guess you could say. Most of the levies we have, we say default cruise because the assumption is, you're not always going to be within 50 kilometers of your target. So it's one of those things. You know, that's just the downfall of missiles, is that they're not as great, but they're still okay.
We have a general question here, which is, do you think that PL will eventually have to settle and actually take space? And in many ways, that seems to be what we're seeing, right? Like PL seems to be having to run rental organizations and defend territory. I keep trying to bring Tim Rizzle back in here. Have you had a chance? Do you want to comment upon the PL thing, or do you want to sort of think about the engagement with Test versus PL some?
Yeah, I had some comments on the ability of PL and NC to influence conflicts with Dread Cache. I think there's a lot of opportunities are still going to exist for the Dread Cache based play, but NC and PL will still be able to influence the foreign conflicts in spite of the increasing fax presence. The problem here with NC and PL versus Test in that scenario was, I think, a large part of it was the timing and setup were off. You don't really want to be dropping your dreads into a larger prepared super fleet. You want it to have less warning than NC and PL gave Test to respond. And it's going to be more of a finesse play moving forward, but the door is definitely not closed on it. They're just going to have to stop sucking.
Well,
Yeah,
That's pretty accurate.
That's a great way to word
Generally-
that.
Billy,
No,
what you got?
he's dead on in terms of saying that. You know, if you're dropping dreads into a prepared, you know, capital and super capital blob, it's generally not going to be successful. You know, the reason it worked so well for you guys in Roar, which kind of was a setup point for the fight against us, because I'm sure PL saw you guys do it and thought, oh, if Goons can do it, anybody can do it, right?
Right.
But you guys caught GOTG off guard, and they absolutely fumbled the execution of using their capitals, which is why they got so absolutely punished. But if they start that fight with all of their faxes at 0 on their Titans, then you've got to spend all that time chewing through those faxes at 0 on their Titans, and it's significantly harder to take that fight. And by the time you finish chewing through all their faxes, then maybe NC Dot has arrived. So, and who knows what you kill at that point, right? So,
Yeah.
It's a very different engagement if you catch people by surprise or off guard, or they make a bad tactic play and you take advantage of it, versus just jumping your dreads into a prepared enemy capital and super capital blob at 0. You're not necessarily going to go your way that way.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I was unaware of the exact mathematics of how extreme, heated minnow reps going to, heated shield hardeners on Super Titan, like how much of a force multiplier or a force negation that is, like a 10 to 30 to 1 ratio of dreads to minnows it's so extreme.
Yeah, it's insane. Just, I mean, everyone's looked at shield faxes. Shield faxes have always been just stronger. They put out so much more powerful reps. I don't know why it is CCP built them that way, but in terms of fax versus fax, minnows are better. But it seems like armor fax are better versus subcaps. Like when you're in a subcap versus subcap situation. Well, no, I'm talking about like if they're fax hacking. They seem to tank better.
No, not even close. Like, generally, the minnow has significantly higher self-rep to a degree of almost double, right? Like, a minnow gets easily into the 120k self-rep tank level, where Apostle really struggles to push past, like, 60 to 70.
Wow.
And the minnow gets, like, in the NCPL fight, with a Phenom generator and, full setup, you're 7 or 8 mil EHP, almost, in terms of your buffer tank, which is pretty fucking heavy duty to chew through. Apostles are not far behind in terms of what they can get buffered with a Phenom, but the strength of the Apostle is in their open mid slots, which gives them a lot more capacitor strength, right? So they can run a cap battery and double or triple injectors, which gives them the ability to be that much more resistant to neuting and unaffected by things like AoE Doomsdays and such. That's the real strength of the Apostle versus the Minnow.
So I guess we just running a little low on time. There's a couple of topics we need to get to real quick, and I'm glad that Tibrizzle and Billy are here for these, because we're going to move into CCP, please, real quick, because there's some big things. There's some big things that have been going on these last couple of weeks, and they need to be addressed. And the Meta Show is the best place to address topics. So we'll move to that for just a few minutes.
I want some more.
I always feel like we don't have enough time. And the biggest thing right here is last week we had reports of people still missing in local. Just recently, a guy posted a thread on Reddit where he said that he got tackled by a Loki who wasn't in local, provided pictures. The Loki hadn't been in local for almost a minute when he got killed. So they're still having issues with local and chat. CCP hasn't really given any word other than they promised some SP reimbursement for our megas. We talked about that last week, but that still hasn't changed. Another thing that's pretty big deal, and this was brought to my attention by K-Color, is those of you that bought the floating Nix. You guys remember that $2,000 thing? Apparently, we've come to find out that company is extremely shady. And
I think they basically disappeared.
Right.
They got sued by Riot, yeah.
Yeah, and the way that Eve is handling this, they're going to give 100 Plex to those of you that paid the real money to help kind of make it up from CCP's end. But the thing that gets me, and this is kind of frustrating, is you're on your own after that. Like, you've got to go get the money yourself, sue the company, whatever you got to do. How would that work from a standpoint of a lawyer? Like, should CCP be the ones going after them for this money, or should it be individuals?
Well, hopefully you paid by PayPal or credit card.
There's not much they can do. I mean, in practice, like from a corporate perspective, CCP is a company, which is an entity that's, I'm not really sure how the international stuff works, but
right.
You know, they're based in Iceland. They made a deal with a vendor, which is another corporation. They promoted that company's product, but that doesn't give rise to any obligation. They don't want to piss off their customers. But just because CCP says, hey, we license, so like imagine Dark Horse Comics. Dark Horse Comics has a license from CCP to produce products with CCP's intellectual property. Same deal here with the Knicks. If Dark Horse Comics went out of business and you had bought a subscription to get, you know, monthly comics out of them or something like that, you have no rights to go to CCP and say, hey, CCP, please go into the comics business and produce something this other company was doing. It looks like these guys kind of went under. Like they had clearly been producing products for a while, otherwise CCP wouldn't have made a deal with them in the first place. And in 2016 they got sued by Riot Games, and there is a judgment for $500,000 to be paid out monthly, 50 grand a month by these guys. And most likely what happened is that this wiped out whatever was left of the company, and if they're not in bankruptcy, they're certainly on the run or just trying to vanish. I'm not sure whether the company is based in the United States or not.
I don't know.
CCP has no. CCP can basically just say, "Sorry, you guys got screwed. Here's some stuff," and that's what they're trying to do. But they're under no obligation to.
Okay, I just figured I'd ask, and then this was also a little caveat to go with that. A Chinese company has started making models, and they're looking at a deal with CCP. Apparently, the company you're talking about previously was New York City. So this is a Chinese company, and they made a Scorpion model. Now, this doesn't float, but it does have the spinning radar, and it does have some power to it with lighting and other cool things. So this might be a cool company to look into. I don't know. And then one more thing that's a big deal is, along with CCP, please, is they've made this push. I mean, we got FanFest coming soon. And there's a lot of rumors coming out of FanFest, and I want to see what you two think about this, Tibrizzle and Billy, that they're looking to change the way that we get around New Eden. You obviously have jump bridges being changed really, really soon with regards to Citadels. They're going to put jump bridges with Citadels, but how they're going to do that, we don't know yet. Maybe that's coming at FanFest. But apparently the way we travel in EVE is going to be talked about in a big way. What speculation do you think comes with that? Any one of you could comment on this.
Can they just fucking fix like lag first, or give me shield slaves? Like
shield slaves.
I don't need to do shit.
So
Well, they've been promising shield slaves for 3 years.
Yeah, I know. Trust me.
At this FanFest, maybe we'll get the new announcement of that shield saves are coming, like we got the last 3 FanFest. But no, in terms of like travel, like what are they going to change? Like all they can do is fuck this up. You know, like no offense to CCP, but like, you know, put jump bridges on citadels. Sure, that's easy, works, awesome. But aside from that, if you're going to try and change shit, like, oh fuck, you better do it good, because you guys don't have a good track record.
They don't have a history of it.
Figuring this shit out.
Tim Russell, tell me about this.
So aren't they supposed to be making player-made Stargates or something eventually?
Yeah, that's where this is where this rumor's coming from. The idea that a player can make 2 Stargates, one in one system, one in another. As long as they can man them and guard them and protect them, they can then travel between those 2 systems anywhere in New Eden, as long as it's in 0-0. Like 0-0 to 0-0, that kind of thing.
I'm curious where this rumor is, because I just don't think it's credible.
But this is like 5 different people have asked me about this. I'm like, I don't fucking know. I don't pay attention to this.
I don't think it's a credible rumor, and here's why. CCP has had to repeatedly delay even the basic promises that they've made as far as making stations capturable, like making all the old outposts something that you could turn them into a citadel and scoop them up, right? That's why one of the reasons why PL went after Providence. And that has been delayed and delayed and delayed again. So any major gameplay changes are something that I think it'll be a while before we see, because CCP appears to be focused on just trying to get people to log in and play the game more. Like, I've personally received a bunch of CCP marketing surveys from my various accounts saying, like, here's a survey that CCP wants you to do, and how are things. Speaking of surveys, subtle segue, very subtle, go me. I'm going to go ahead and link this again. That's not the short link version, but it's the same thing, is the Metashow survey. We want to get people's feedback about what we can do to make the show better. Any good ideas or missing segments or things that you think you would like to see, we'd love to hear about. But I think the biggest thing, we'll run a little bit long today, because one of the things that we haven't talked about yet on the show is the fact that the game has been basically broken for a while, ever since the big patch, because of this local bullshit. Of course, I'm not really sure.
It done fucked up.
Well, you know, that is basically, there's not too much to say about it other than, like, the chat windows are all screwed, what the fuck, but, you know, it's the elephant in the room, and if we don't say, yo, guys, shit's fucked.
No, it is. Like, where is CCP on this? I mean, I understand they don't tend to talk about their mistakes very much, but I think there should be at least some updates. Like, hey, we're still working on this. Hey, we're still doing this. This is where we are. We're sorry, we're trying our best. I mean, something. Like, this is what happens, and you might like this. When you delete a community manager team, when you get rid of your people that talk to the player base, this happens, right? You have no communication. Nobody has any fucking clue what's going on. Especially when Mitten starts saying it, you know? Like, what?
But let's not forget, this is not, like, the only way the game has been broken in a long time. They've been ignoring. Like, all the desync issues from the bug in a box patches a couple of years ago, those are all still with us. You basically can't move supers without half your fleet getting so desynced that it's unsafe to extract. Like, we have people randomly e-warping while logged in off-grid. That still happens. That's how we lost those supers in the catch campaign. Like, that still happens.
Right, yeah.
All right, what do you think about this, Tim?
Well,
someone in chat, Noisy Gamer, I love Noisy Gamer. He goes, seriously, guys, CCP's giving up local for Lent.
Well, I think that this is a fascinating bug in many ways, because it proves that EVE players do not want to be playing in a no local environment, right? When this bug went in, the number of people playing the game was more than cut in half for the initial few days after the patch. So instead of having,
say that. You can't say everyone.
I can.
Well, you can. Well, I'm going to counter that
And,
with the people that quit playing are the money makers. Right? I loved it. I thought it was the best. Like, you imagine the amount of hunting I got to do.
Right, but that doesn't matter.
The way to say it, though.
What you think is, Billy was probably going to say this, is like the point is the number of players out of the player base was significantly cut. Like from a business perspective, like you can't go like, oh hey, players love the game with like no local and this is wonderful. Like there's no way that CCP is ever going to consider taking local out after this happened, because they accidentally tried it and half of the player base vanished overnight. Villy, what you got?
So the thing is, people don't always seem to understand is that, you know, in Eve, you know, I hate to use this reference because I think it's a movie reference or something. Like, you know, there are wolves, there are sheep, and there are sheepdogs, right? Like that reference. But like the vast majority of Eve are sheep, right? Like these people don't, you know, want to chill in their area, be cool. And no local is awesome for the wolves, and it's bad for everybody else. But those wolves are like 10% of the player base at most, right? Like everybody gets to put on their wolf suit and go roaming most of the time. But you know, the majority of the time, people are, you know, they want some level of security when they're doing stuff. You know, if I'm going to put, you know, 50 billion Iskin Rorquals down, or my 3 billion is Rattlesnake to run the Anoms with or something, I want at least the ability to know what's going on around me, right? So if I've got this false mechanism that, you know, normally tells me, you know, when there's a danger, and now it doesn't, then that's an issue. Because, you know, you haven't given us the, you know, the alternative mechanisms to refine our protection. So it causes problems, and if, you know, people don't have that security, then they just don't want to play at all.
The people who want to live in a no local environment have moved to wormholes, but this is one thing that I like, because that argument has always annoyed me, and now it's dead. It is a dead argument. At any time in the future, whenever you see on any blog, on any post, and any person herfing blurfs and saying that local should be removed and it'll make the game better and all this stuff, you can just point at them and say that they're a fucking idiot, because the game will be over. It was tried, it failed, the player base rejected it. You can have a niche game from a bankrupt company and play it on an emulator, or you can go to Wormhole Space, and that's where you can get your no local fix, but nobody else wants to play that one. So yeah, that's... Maybe it is the case.
I don't know. I again, I don't.
The numbers don't lie.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying no local is a solution, but they need something, because it's gotten to a point, and we've abused this, or I've abused this personally, where if I Twitch stream 10 different gates, I can guarantee that I'm going to know people coming in local, you know, in local as they pop in local. I can just switch stream the system. 10 different systems in all of Delve, and nobody can get into Delve without me knowing about it, unless they sign
wormholes.
Up. Right, or wormholes. But that, again, that's just rare. But like, people that are gating fleets over are not gonna know. Now, again, Eve is a PvE game. No, I admit that. Right, it is. But for those of us that enjoy the PvP aspect quite a lot, and the only reason I log in is to do PvP, like I did with the Dread Bomb on GOTG, thanks Sort, is no local would be huge. It would be game breaking. I mean, obviously, it'll never happen, but...
It would be game-breaking. That's correct.
You're right. It would be huge and be game-breaking. And it broke the game. That's simply my point, is that, like, you have to have, and this is old-school reference... Sad, the fact that this is an old-school reference makes me feel old. But one of the funny things, the name Lock of Volterra, that old alliance in EVE Online, Lock of Volterra is the name of the predator and prey equation to have balance in an ecosystem. And that is one of the things that this proved, is like when you make things become too predatory, in the case of the real world, the prey die off and the predators all starve. In the case of EVE Online, if you balance things too far towards the predators, the prey simply stop playing and play other games and vanish. So this has put to bed forever any serious argument that the player base of EVE Online would enjoy a no local high-sec and null-sec. The answer is that they don't.
Let me ask this last question then, since we can't get to local. I like this proposal. Someone told me this week. AFK cloaking. That's a big hot topic, and I'll ask this of Tibrizzle, because I know you do it often, is put AFK cloaking on a 1-hour timer. If you're active, you just press a button every hour. It updates the game to let you know that you're here. What happens then? You don't like this discussion, do you, Vinton? It's like the idea of removing that.
I think AFK cloaking is a core component of the game and has been since cloaking devices were invented.
I've done it.
That's why we founded the Black Ops group in Goonswarm back in the day. But you know, I find that the people who are complaining about AFK cloaking, I know you asked this to Tibbers, although this is like a super rant.
Go ahead, please. That's what we're here
Space
for.
Bee Twitch, is that the answer to AFK cloaking is player organization, right? AFK cloaking is not a problem in Delve because we have a networked group of people working together to defend each other. Because a single bomber cloaked AFK in your system isn't a threat if you have friends on deck to react and bail you out when you get in trouble. There's a counter to it. Tibbers, what you got?
I don't really think AFK cloaking is a problem because if someone AFK cloaking in your system stops you from ratting, someone...
You cut off.
You cut off.
Oh, any presence would stop you from ratting. Like, I don't see why it matters that the person is cloaked. It's the cowardice that's like driving the resistance to the AFK cloaking mechanic, and some other threat is going to fill the role that AFK cloaking does as soon as you remove AFK cloaking. Next easiest way to hunt someone.
Yeah,
they can't really tell the difference between AFK cloaking and scouting. It's entirely in the mind's eye of the person. For all they know, the person who is like, so let's say that they're upset about AFK cloaking. What happens if CCP implements some sort of stupid way to nerf cloaking, and then that person is active, and they just once every hour they reactivate their cloak, and then they realize that the people who are camping them are actually there, and then they're just like, ah! The answer is organized network, make friends, have an active community that cares about each other, as opposed to a bunch of isolated people who are just trying to exploit territory. But I mean, I wouldn't want to be friends with people in darkness.
Let's be honest.
It's especially funny.
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
I find it especially funny
to drive conversation. You know, sorry.
I find it especially funny because since Fraternity declared war on us, we have a couple people in test with certain abilities and maybe SP farms or something. I'm not sure quite exactly what they do. But anyways, they're like, "Are we good to go, Bill?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're good to go." And like, they started moving like 200 like cloaky camping ults into Fraternity space, and it's like, "Hello, bot farms. You want to go to war with me?" It's because. A single cloaky camper in local is well known for being, good for your bots.
Right. That is going to be highly amusing.
I like AFK cloaky camping. I do 5-6 ults at a time whenever Bomberwolf goes somewhere to mess with someone's home. I've done it to Sort Dragon's group many times. It's just I like playing devil's advocate because I love hearing.
No, it's a good question, but it's a good question.
There's always little things.
I mean, it down.
The idea of permanent cloaking is beneficial for Bomberwolf because we can sit there for 4 hours and do it. I just like the idea of maybe even having a module like a little button. I mean, yeah, like someone says in chat, a single keyboard macro would solve that problem because keyboard macros are allowed as long as it presses one button and serves one purpose, right? You can press that one button, it just can't serve multiple buttons. So, of course, there's ways around it, but it's a good discussion that's been going on in EVE for a long fucking time. The simple solution, as Tim Bristol said, is friends. The more friends you got, the better it is.
And CCP should be fixing the fucking game.
I got another one.
So yeah,
for
I think
you.
we're.
I think you'll like this, Mittens. This is for you.
Uh-oh.
Someone this week posted a Reddit thread, just I think yesterday, saying how in the world did Goons go from having allies like FCON SMA to allies like Int, Initiative, and Snuffbox? And the guy was like, look, you guys used to have shitty allies. Now you got rid of those shitty ones, and now you gain these good ones. What was the trigger? And my response to that was friendship. You develop friendships, like you have Hiwanto and J Maziness, and eventually friendships extend to alliances. What do you think?
I think it's an interesting question because I could just give a pat answer of something like, oh, well, we got sick of shitty allies. But hey, I think it's something more than that. I think it's like as an alliance, Goonswarm started developing, this is going to sound really hurtful, but I think we really started developing healthy boundaries in relationships. In many ways, during the CFC days, our diplomatic team allowed the SMAs and the FCONs of the world to trample all over us. We would basically wipe the asses of our worst allies, and the more weak and incompetent the ally was, the more that we would wipe their asses. And so in many ways, you see this with people in codependent relationships in the real world, and people who just get walked all over by their partner, stuff like that. we started setting boundaries. And when it came to the end of the casino war, when we forged the Goonhammer, we were just like, you know what, fuck you. Like, if you are not going to treat us with respect, we will not treat you with respect. And we started playing basically tit for tat. With our allies. So once we got rid of shitty allies that were not treating us with the respect that we were showing them, that created space for better relationships with allies. You're not going to have a chance to make good friends or date good people that are healthy and mature if you're wasting all of your time taking care of a fat alcoholic on the couch, in the case of like an SMA kind of thing.
And that's the thing, too. I think SMA at one point, a lot of people forget this, at one point SMA was strong. They could form 250-man fleets. They had strong leadership that were friendly with us that made them work. It's when they lost their strong leadership and became a pile of shitbag in the running the show that they fell apart, I think. When they had two brothers running the show, they were really efficient, and then they fell apart. And that's the thing. And in it, to correct what people are saying in chat, and Snuff have really strong leaders, right? They always have. And I think that plays a huge part in it. Strong leaders work well with strong leaders.
Well, you got to be...
I don't know. I'll actually add a point into that, because your former ally and my former ally of the Circle of Two is kind of an interesting example where just because somebody has, a fair amount of power and a strong leadership doesn't mean you're working towards the same goals.
Well, he's not a strong leader, though.
CO2 eventually, made some decisions where we kind of had to say, this is bad, man. You can't do this. We can't do this. They're like, no, we're doing it. We're fucking doing it. And I'm like, then we're not going to be friends anymore. And they're like, well, we're still going to do it. Like, and we can't be friends anymore. Fucking traitor. It's there comes it in, even if you're worse off for it, sometimes it's the right call to make to, cut your ties with people who are toxic to your success and survival, I guess you could say.
Are you talking about when they started to invade the DRF when you were currently deployed in DRF space?
Yes, that is part of it. Yeah.
So
I think that that's an example. As people are saying, Philly's point is, just because somebody is being socially aggressive or acting like an alpha male in the case of GigX, doesn't mean that what Villy's talking about there is setting boundaries, right? Like you can have a absent leadership in the case of SMA. You can have vacillating leadership, making excuses about democracy in the case of AFCON, or you can have aggressive and abusive leadership in the case of GigX. In all cases, what they're trying to do is get, in the case of Goonswarm, they were trying to get Goonswarm to do X, Y, and Z without treating us with respect in return in the same way. So just because somebody is beating their chests and acting strong doesn't mean that it's a healthy relationship.
We have a subscriber question, and this one I think will be best directed at Tibrizzle. What do you think about the slopes that are happening up north with GOTG Coalition? Do you think that's a thing that will continue and eventually they will die?
I don't think NCMPO will allow the pet and renter presence, that buffer between Tribute and Tenal, to die fully, but I do think it's possible for them to sustain some pretty severe damage in the short term. They seem to be losing cohesion and on the back foot without Horde to carry them.
And that is a very good point. PL and NC.dot have so much of an investment in making sure. An earlier question was about PL having to adjust to an environment where ISK doesn't come from casinos or from alliance tournaments, and that is the side effect of this: is that they kind of have to keep their super cap fleet stuck up in the tribute zone, such that they can defend this. I think that they're going to be. They will prop up some sort of Weekend at Bernie's crappy alliance. We're going to have to call it. I've got
we're out of time, man.
Yes,
Yeah.
we are. I want to thank Villy and Tibrizzle, and all of our subscribers got like extra bonus time because we went 20 minutes over. We did see in the feedback for the Meta Show that a lot of people asked us to go longer, and that's pretty cool. So we're not always going to have the show be an hour and a half or something like that, but we're going to make a point if we have a lot to discuss and a good dynamic going on. We'll just sort of let things roll.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like we just run out of time, and that sucks. But that's awesome for today, because today was a great show. So we'll be back next week.
All right, guys, thank you so much for coming, and
thanks,
we
everyone.
will see you next week.
Yep, bye, guys.
You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the Meta. The Meta controls everything. The Meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.